Composing Gloves here, and today we're going to be talking about the grid, the matrix in Sytrus, specifically routing. Now, if you're going to use Sytrus, you're going to be confronted with this thing, and you're going to see it's got two modes, and it's a nightmare. And if you intend to use it, you are going to need to know how to manipulate it so that it is no longer your nightmare. This is a huge holdup. And I've decided to cover it as the second video because I think it's that important to understand. If you intend to do stuff, you're going to want to know where your stuff is going and what's happening. So these first 6 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, these first 6 rows have to do with FM and FM synthesis. So I'm going to refer you to the matrix video in that series, Learn FM. I actually specifically cover this. I cover the one in FM8 as well. And they deal with FM, so I expect you to look at it in the context of FM. So I will cover this again. I'll give you a basic rundown. Basically, each one of these rows represents an operator. So this is operator 1 is the horizontal row, operator 2, operator 3, operator 4, blah, 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 blah. And then the vertical rows going down are as a modulator. So if we want 1 to be modulated by 1, we turn this knob, and we'll get a square wave. And I have my sound all the way up. Okay, we get a square wave. Now, if I turn this down, it's all great. Now, if I want 1 to be modulated by, say, 2, I could do that. So this is a very basic relationship, very simple to understand. If I want 1 to be modulated by 3, now what if I want 3 to be modulated by 1? Well, I come down here to operator 3. So this is operator 3, and I want it to be modulated by 1. I know I haven't talked about operators yet, but you need to understand that relationship. It'll become very important later on. Essentially, the horizontal row is the row that makes your sound. The vertical row is the row that makes your modulation. Now, I do expect you to have watched my sound synth basics. That way I don't need to be sitting here talking about really simple concepts because I made a whole series for that. So we can output a waveform. So we have 6 operators, and that's what these things are representing. You can see they move quite nicely around. And when we have one of them being outputted, we can see in Sytrus, it lets us know by this little yellow line. It says, hey, just so you know, operator 1's going out to some degree. If we turn this off, it disappears. So that's a really nifty thing. So right now, operator 1, which is a sine wave, is going out. If we want 2 to go out, we just output operator 2. Okay, that's really great and dandy. So what are some things here? So you can right click to mute one. So let's say that you don't want to undo what you've done here, so you can mute it. And that's really great and dandy as well. Now we can output 1, we can output 3. Let's go to operator 3 and make it a saw wave. And say, oh, okay, this makes a lot of sense. This is a vertical row. That makes sense. So that should also give you a sense that it's not the vertical deal. That's specifically with FM. You can see the FM panel is actually a brighter color than the effects down here, which we'll get to. So once we have this facilitated, we're like, oh, all right, dude, man, bro, this seems pretty self-explanatory. Well, what if I want to pan things? Well, you can do that too. You can pan things to the left or to the right, or I did that backwards. Left, right. And so left, right. So you could create some interesting relationships on your output. Now you can send things to the effects as well. So let's say that I've got on my effects unit a reverb, and we're going to talk about this later. But right now, it's not getting any reverb. Well, I could send it to the reverb, and I have reverb. And you notice that these knobs go 2 ways. One is a polarity flip. So if a polarity flip, that's all I should have to say about phase. Go look up the sound synth basics on phase if you are curious about what I just said. So anyways, it'll phase inverted, which is another really interesting option. That's why pan goes left, right. However, all these other knobs are phase inverted, which can make quite a big difference, especially if you've got DC offset going on in your signal, which we'll talk about when we get to the wave, these extra cool buttons right here, which isn't necessarily always DC offset. So, all right, okay, this sounds pretty reasonable. We can pan things, we can send them to effects. And I know I haven't talked about how these things work in here. We're just looking at the grid. We just want to know where our crap is going so we can make informed decisions about what we want to do later. So, okay, this is all really great and dandy. We have our out. We can put up to 6. What is these? what are these effects, these F1, F2, F3? Well, these are our filters. So it's got subtractive synthesis capabilities. As a result, our filters will become very important. It's very similar. I feel like Sytrus is sort of a mashup of Harmor, an FM synthesizer, and Fruity Love filter. I have a whole series on Fruity Love filter. It's very similar to it, and the delay bank in a way. So essentially, instead of outputting something here, we can come down here and we can say these operate as send effects. Now, I'm willing to bet that a lot of you are probably FL guys mostly. I mean, you own Sytrus. So with the way you've probably grown up doing reverb, the way you've probably been taught is a horrible way. It's a way I used to do it all the time. It's in a lot of tracks that I do. It's not necessarily wrong. It's just less effective. And it can screw with the way you understand this. But I think I'm making it bigger than it needs to be. But I just want to say that I think people in FL just don't know how to use send effects near as much as other like Ableton users or Logic users or just other DAW users where send effects are sort of a requirement. So it can be a big CPU saver. So anyways, I digress. We come back here to F1, filter 1. We can send stuff here. So you notice these are dark gray, dark, sort of a blackish color. Well, these don't operate like, oh, we're modulating one by one or whatever. This is literally a send. So we could send 1. So we don't need an output for this to work. We could say, I want 1 to get sent to filter 1. And I can turn it on and it goes to filter 1. And I can say on filter 1, you can pan filter 1. You can send an effect to filter 1. So you can affect it from the effects section right here. So after you filtered it, you can then add the reverb and things. And then you can say, I want filter 1 to go out as an independent source. So we hear filter 1. But if I turn this off, we don't hear anything as I'm playing the keys. And then as I turn on it up here, that's because filter 1 is being sent to, operator 1 is being sent to filter 1. I could send like operator 6 to filter 1 and output that. And so I could send them all in parallel. This is parallel processing. So if you have this on, you're sending a mix out. So you'll control the amount of mix via this knob. Now you cannot automate these. Unfortunately, they are unautomatable. I do not know what the decision-making process was in that. So you may have to jump through some hoops if you're trying to go for a particular effect. You may choose to use external filtering. It's up to you. So that's what filters are, and you have 3 of them. And we'll talk about these later, but it's important to understand that these operate like send effects. So, okay, that's really cool. And you can pan those individually and we can have the effects. So if I want like filter, so I can send operator 1 out here, then I can come down here, say I want operator 6, this one, I want it to be a triangle wave. And, whoops, I sorely probably confused a few people right now. That's part of FM. So operator 1's coming out, it's a sine wave, just to show you. Okay, now we take operator 6 and we make it a triangle wave. But we don't hear a triangle wave because operator 6 has not been told to come out. I can make it come out using operator 6's line. I could pan it. I could also add reverb to it. And it's interesting to note these are all post reverb sends. It'd be kind of neat if we can make them pre. I suppose you could just go in there and control the reverb itself. I don't know. There's just a number of other... I digress. So we come over here and now it's like, oh, okay, well, instead I could send 6 to filter 1 and then I could send it out there. And so it's got a filter on it right now. Of course, I'm sending it to the filter. So we're going to talk about the filter unit later. So, okay, that's really cool. And so we understand basic FM routing. We understand this and that. You might not understand FM at all, which is why I have that series. And then if we come down here, we have this RM modulation. It works essentially the same way FM does. And you can have, now, it's something to take note of. It turns yellow, which is really cool. This is, the vectorial interface is like, I just love this. It'd be cool to be able to resize this as separate, maybe break them out in separate windows, but that'd be kind of an unnecessary thing, I suppose. But it'd be nice to have my FM grid like separate from the plugin at times, so I can manipulate relationships while I'm doing like something else. I don't know. Maybe that's like a waste of time. So anyways, if you move one of these filter knobs, these are not related to the modulation in any way, so they get carried over. They get carried between. So do all these other relationships. So they stay the same in both. However, now you can if you hold down Alt and click, they return them to their default values. So, however, in RM, if we move a relationship here, these are separate. This is controlling our ring modulation. It does not exist in our FM modulation. So that's a different thing. I'm sorry, I have to look where my Alt key is because I have a microphone. Like I can't just look down. There's a mic right in front of me. So anyways, that is the matrix. This is quite an important concept. You may need to watch this video. If you've never routed signal before, this could be very confusing. Now I'm assuming you've watched my Sound Synth Basics, so you at least know what an oscillator is, and you get the idea that these things are making noise and they're coming out. So if you don't get it, that's okay. Just go through the video again and try and follow along, sort of do what I'm doing. But yeah, this is like super mega important. And it's not, there are more intuitive designs than other plugins, but I think this is perfectly fine and capable with what it's got going on. So that's that. If you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day.
Opposing gloves. Reversing.